Today we will try to speak about the structure of reality in general from the very beginning, which is actually the whole topic of the wisdom of Kabbalah. This ancient wisdom comes to us from people who had attained the spiritual nature through attributes and tools and methods that they developed. What they attained, what they felt, what they understood of the structure of reality in its depth, this is what they convey to us. There's a part of reality where we exist, which we research with our five senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. And through our research, we open up, develop our worldly or mundane teachings, the natural sciences. And there's another part of reality which is concealed, meaning that we do not feel in our five senses. We can research it if we develop an additional sense, new attributes. This wisdom is called the wisdom of the hidden. That's what it's called, because it explains to us what is naturally hidden from us. Why is reality partly revealed and partly concealed? Because what we find, we always find according to equivalence of attributes. There are attributes within us that we find what's around us to the extent that they exist, but we lack attributes that if we develop them, we will discover the same attributes in forms that are outside us. For example, if my senses, like sound and sight, are built in such a way that I perceive some power or frequency of waves, and if those waves appear outside of me, I perceive them, I notice them. These waves might create a sensation of scent in me if they encounter the scent nerves, or in the eye, or in the ear, etc. These are all waves, but to the extent that my inner physical mechanism can perceive them according to the law of equivalence of form, accordingly I receive the overall picture, the waves outside of me, and that builds my picture of reality, the sensation of reality. Therefore, the method of Kabbalah is first and foremost to help one build a new internal attribute, a new sensor, which would then receive a frequency which was previously unfelt. This addition will build within us another picture, and this picture will be called the upper world. Why the upper world? because we will find that in that part of reality that was concealed from us, and through the inner change in us, now we find that that part in us that was now added to our picture of the world, in it, all the forces that are later on to be felt in our natural senses are born in all the many ways. It'll appear to us as something that is prepared above our natural senses, and afterwards, from there, these forces will come down to my senses and render the picture of the new world and the flow of time. Hence, this upper reality is called upper reality, because it precedes what I will feel in my natural senses. Kabbalists are therefore called Kabbalists because they have an ability to receive, lekabel, this picture of reality, which precedes the natural picture of reality that we all perceive in our natural senses. And by finding this upper rudimentary reality, we can also, through researching it, understand where that reality in itself, this upper reality, comes from. And then we come to a special force, a collective force, including all the incidents in the upper world and in this world, which we call Creator. Why? Because we find that it is the first. It procreated the upper reality, the lower reality, the still, the vegetative, the animate, and the speaking in this entire reality, this overall reality. It monitors, guides, dominates every little detail with one force and with one thought and one purpose. That's what Kabbalists find through their study of the upper reality. So what does appear to them? They discover that that upper force, its nature with respect to reality, meaning with respect to all the senses that we can develop, and in which, with which we are born and feel the bestowal from that one force, we learn from that that force is benevolent, that actually its preliminary point is that of love. That's what we feel. And from that love, from what in Kabbalah is called the desire to do good, he wanted, or it wanted, to create reality in its entirety, in the still, in the vegetative, in the animate, and the speaking, in order to benefit it. How can it benefit? Because this upper force, this force is unlimited, whole, and its love is its desire to bestow, to do good, comes not out of a want, but out of love, out of bestowal, out of abundance that is felt in its completeness. Hence, it wants to bring the creatures to that state, which in itself is in. In other words, to bring the creature to the same wholeness. But what does it mean to bring the creature, meaning someone outside of him, to his completeness? There seems to be a contradiction in terms here. If the Creator, this upper force, is in a perfect state, how can there be anyone else in that perfect state too? It has to be, or it would have to be exactly like that force. It would have to be the same. Or is it enough to have the same property? Here we run into the first terms of Kabbalah. What does it mean to be like someone else? Like someone. Being like someone, or as Kabbalists put it, to be in equivalence of form with someone, to be similar to someone, means that there are two bodies, desires, creatures, or creator and creature, whose natural form remains the same, and the attribute or the desire or the intention in them is the same. If the Creator he wrote Creator is in a form of bestowal, and we do not speak of his substance, of who he is, that is something we do not perceive. That's his essence, and we have no foundation to speak of it, because all we perceive is what comes from him to us, and what comes to us from him is the form of bestowal. Good, abundance, that's what we feel. His attributes toward us is bestowal. And if we, regardless of our nature, of what nature we're made of, if we, the creature, reach the same measure of bestowal that exists in the Creator toward him, then we will be in equivalence of form with him. What is a form? An outer, an exterior attribute, a desire, an intention. And then we'll be like him, equal. He and we. Why? Because his giving to us is the only thing that I understand and feel and perceive. That's, for me, is his nature. And it is enough for me to reach the same kind of expression toward him. And then we equalize. Creature equals Creator. This is the purpose of creation from the perspective of the Creator, to create the creatures and to bring them to a state of being like him, because his state is wholeness. Rav wrote whole. And he created us in such a way that we crave that wholeness. And our sensation of not having that wholeness is called want or lack or deficit. Chisaron in Hebrew. In our nature, there's an unending drive to reach the wholeness, the completeness of the Creator, which stems from his thoughts of us, which is called the thought of creation, to do good to his creations. The creature, if it has, it's got many, many attributes, and in all of them it has to come, it has to bring them to a form of bestowal. So here we can understand how there is an equivalence of form, a partial equivalence of form, and a complete equivalence of form. If, for example, within the creature, there's a part of the creature which is in attributes of bestowal compared to the Creator, and a part is not in bestowal, then to the extent that a part is in bestowal, to that extent they are close to one another, the creature and the Creator. It is said in the wisdom of Kabbalah that if the creature and the Creator are in a state where the creature is entirely not in the state of bestowal like the Creator, then they are as far away as possible from one another. Like the east from the west, like two things, there is no greater oppositeness and no greater distance than that. If the Creator and the creature are in a state where one attribute of the creature becomes like the Creator, then to that extent the creature touches the Creator. If several parts of the creature become similar to the Creator, to that extent the creature and the Creator are connected. Because all we feel from the Creator is His attribute of bestowal, and we don't feel anything else. We cannot find it. It belongs to His essence, something that we do not perceive or attain. So we only perceive Him as an attribute of bestowal, like a mother feels the mother or perceives her as being entirely toward him, toward it, to serve it, care for it, and it doesn't perceive the essence of the mother. She's a woman, she has a husband, and maybe she has dealings in this world, and she has all kinds of worries, and the child doesn't know about that. All it knows is, that's my mother, and she owes me, she's indebted to me, she cares for me. All it perceives is her attitude, and that's why it calls her mommy. So that's how we are with respect to the Creator. If we acquire the same attribute as His of bestowal, then to the extent of equivalence of form, the outer form, His outer form, and ours, our substance remains the same. We'll talk about it afterwards. So to that extent we equalize with Him, meaning we feel together. And then the creature is in the same state as the Creator, which is called good, where according to the thought of creation it reaches a state of wholeness. If all the attributes of the creature are in a situation where they are like the Creator, then they are, both of them, as one, and that state is called unification, wholeness. In Kabbalah, it is also called Gmar Tikun, the end of correction, where the creature corrected all its desires to match the Creator. It's also called Dvekut, adhesion, because they are adhered together like two identical things with identical properties. And that state is in fact the goal, the purpose of creation from the perspective of the Creator, and the purpose of evolution from the perspective of nature, of the creature. That's what Kabbalists tell us. And the Creator, whom we divide to His essence, and then the Creator with respect to us, who creates us through the attribute of bestowal, and thinks of us that we should be similar to Him. It gives us, it makes us, influences after the birth to become similar to Him. And His thought about us is called the thought of creation. Which is to delight His creatures. When it is felt as delighting His creatures, once the creature reaches equivalence with the Creator, then the creature feels good. On the way, as the creature corrects itself here, the path of work on equalizing the form, that's the path of evolution of the creature, during which the creature perhaps might not feel good because it hasn't obtained the final worthy state yet. So Kabbalists say, actually, why do we attain the wisdom of Kabbalah, understand what happens with us, feel, open up the world that we are in? Why was it given to us? And not like the other parts of reality, the still vegetative and speaking. It's because in a transition from 3 to 4, we are in a state of choice, where in this state we only advance through our free choice. It is here that we have to give of ourselves, make an effort internally, exert to understand. There's a drive that has to be here, and only through this effort do we advance, and not in any other way. That's why the wisdom of Kabbalah comes to explain to us what kind of effort we need to make here in order to reach a state where we are born. That's state number 3. From there to this state that we eventually have to reach, which is number 4. And what actions in our desire, in our consciousness, do we have to make on ourselves in order to come from the oppositeness of form, where the Creator is yes and we do not, does bestow and we do not bestow, to the state of completeness, of matikun, and of correction and unification and dvekut or adhesion. Along the way, the Kabbalists tell us that a part of the way we experience unconsciously, not knowing where we are, what we have to do. We just live, exist. We're born, we live, we die, and we're reborn and live and die again. A part of the way we have to experience consciously. We begin to take an interest and accordingly understand where we are, in which world, in what reality, what we have to do, how we should flow with thought of creation to delight His creatures. And this thought of creation to delight His creatures, which operates reality, pressures us, presses us to move from state 3 to state 4. That's why Kabbalists say that the reason for all the troubles and torments and unpleasantness, from the smallest to the greatest, the only reason for any bad feeling, any want, is that thought of creation, to do good to His creations. It comes from the abundance of the Creator, who wants to give it to us. But that's what prompts us, pushes us to acquire equivalence of form, and that is why we feel its pressure so negatively. Negatively in the sense that we feel bad, torments, difficulties on all kinds of levels. And it is in fact a lack of equivalence of form, or absence of it. Because if a situation where we are together with Him is a situation where we feel as good, before we come to that state, we will feel bad. Bad is felt according to the level of the development of the creature, according to the states where, according to the thought of creation, it has to advance, it has to evolve, etc. So this is what we learn about in the wisdom of Kabbalah. So the wisdom of Kabbalah engages in who the Creator is, because the Creator means in Hebrew, Boreh, come and see, Boreh. In other words, we can discover Him, come close to Him, understand Him, and accordingly understand how we should change according to Him. So the wisdom of Kabbalah engages in the Creator, or deals with the Creator. It deals with the entire reality, the still vegetative animated speaking, both the upper, which we feel only through the additional sense, and the lower, which we feel as the still vegetative animate in our world, where we are born with 5 senses. And throughout the evolution, why we evolve, how, by what, in what forms, why is the world built in this and that way, what are the forms of evolution of each and every one of them, meaning each and every soul, each and every person, each element in reality. Why is reality built specifically this way, and what are the interconnections between all parts of reality? For all in all, we, as creatures, the highest, the most conclusive in reality, have to bring the entire reality to that same state of unification, wholeness, Gmar Tikkun, and Dvekut, adhesion, at the end of correction. And as we've said here, our way starts from being completely distant from the Creator until we come to complete equivalence of form with the Creator, according to the exterior attribute as He gives it to us and is felt by us and opens up to us and is perceived by us. Accordingly, we have to correct ourselves and on the outside be that way toward Him. And why do we begin the way from the opposite end, where the Creator created us, as Kabbalists say, in oppositeness of form from Him? That state number 3 is a state where we are completely opposite from the Creator. And state number 4 is where we are completely similar to the Creator. And the path is called the path of correction through choice. Why do we need to experience all that? Kabbalists say that in order to feel the state of dvekut, of adhesion, we have to feel the state of lack of dvekut, because every state in the creature is felt through its opposite state. As it is written in Kabbalah, as far as light excelleth darkness. And we know that from every conduct in this world, where if I want to feel something in this world, I have to know it in its every detail, vis-a-vis all other properties or things or forces or states it is in. And this is how I learn about it. I understand it or perceive it. I never perceive anything in its essence. I always perceive it vis-a-vis, through the contrast between two things, and I measure them, and that's how I learn. This is why we have to experience an incomplete state, lack of adhesion, lack of dvikut, of correction, feel them, experience them, and then out of discovering of the want to come to be whole. We'll talk about the necessity for that, where it comes from, as we develop, evolve in our study. We'll see it. Now we'll talk about how we study the wisdom of Kabbalah. The first sage in the wisdom of Kabbalah who talked about it systematically is Abraham, the patriarch. There were Kabbalists before him, but he was the first to write and leave behind some of his writings. Kabbalists attain the upper reality, and the entire reality, including ours, meaning the upper roots, and their phenomena here in our reality. They feel it as one, and they explain to us about everything that they feel. They begin to feel in the tiniest sensation in the root of reality what is beyond what we see, and feel ourselves and everything around us. So from the smallest sensation to the greatest or deepest sensation, which includes everything that exists and that came out of the Creator, which is called created. This includes the upper worlds, our worlds, the creatures in every world and in our worlds, the conducts of guidance and providence and corrections and evolution to the end of every single situation. But they feel those situations, this reality, gradually from the state of an ordinary person, as we do, where we feel nothing except what we see around us and perceive around us. We see where we are and start thinking about it, of where we are. Even to think about it is not a simple thing. And they begin to penetrate through this picture to the forces that stand behind it and discover what they are. And once they penetrate into reality, they come to a state where they see it in its entirety and begin to think about it as a mechanism, a uniform system, which is called the reality. Normally, they do not speak of the way by which they attain it, research it, conclude things, just like scientists in our world. Why should I care if some scientist discovered a medicine or a good thing or a remedy, and perhaps he was working on it for dozens of years and he was looking and he made all kinds of mistakes, and the efforts that he made, at the end of the day, he explains to me what he reached and what he's attained now and what he can now share with me and do good to me. Kabbalists are the same. They don't explain to us, usually. There is a part of Kabbalah that explains it too, but normally they give us the picture that they attain at the end, once they see reality from above. And because in the end they come to a state where they know the Creator, the attribute of bestowal, Him, So they begin their story about this adventure, this trail of discovering reality, not from below upward, not from how they started and how they evolved and came to this overall conclusive vision. But they start from the Creator, from this force that decided to create reality, and how from the thought of creation, how it started doing things and implemented. That's how they begin. And that's how we will learn, as it is written in the Ari's Tree of Life, as Baal Salam explains to us in the preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah, and Talmud Sfirot, the studies in Sfirot. All the Kabbalists, or you can open other books as well. There are many books. And actually, all of them, if they speak systematically, they begin from the Creator. Because if we study our roots, how creation started, with what desire, what intention, yes. The end of the act begins with a preliminary thought, where the final shape exists to begin with as the goal, and this final shape determines what happens every step of the way. If we know the beginning well, it'll help us understand our whole life in every incident, and not err, and use every situation along with the thought of creation, and look at it from the perspective of the Creator, and thus advance correctly, and come out of the situations from a state of lack to a state of wholeness, a good state. So let's begin from the thought of creation. The thought of creation is the thought of the Creator, to create the creature in order to benefit it. That thought of creation is what we call light, or Bchinat Shoresh, the root phase. It is the root of the entire reality. Prior to the thought of creation, Kabbalists say that there is some term called Atzmuto, his essence. This term indicates that he is unattainable. He is locked, closed, and cannot be perceived by us, except the fact that it exists. Perhaps there are situations highly, very, very advanced, we'll talk about them afterwards, where in the future perhaps the creature comes to a state where even the essence becomes closer, more familiar. Attained Kabbalists tell us that while we are on our way from number 3 to number 4, on the path of tikkun, correction, until we equalize with the thought of creation, that's the thought of creation. And that's what we have to equalize with, not above it. So the goal is to equalize in form with it. And we do not speak of more than that. This is actually the goal. The light, the thought of creation, to do good to its creations, creates something called a desire to enjoy, to receive, a want. It's called Bchina Aleph, phase 1. Why? Because if the light, the Creator, wants someone to enjoy, it has to create something that will want to take pleasure in him. So that phase 1, or Bchina Aleph, is called a desire for pleasure or a want. This is the beginning of the creature. If that's the thought of creation, and here the creature is in fact exists only potentially, but it is still a part of the Creator. Bchinat Shoresh, the root phase. So Bchina Aleph, phase 1, is already a creature. It's not a developed creature yet, because its desire came from the Creator. It doesn't feel that it wants in itself, that it wants to take pleasure in the light, that it wants to cling to it, that it lacks something. That want is, well, let's call it a still want. It is it doesn't obligate it to anything. Why? Because it comes from the outside, meaning the substance of creation, the desire is the substance, is not ascribed to the creature at all. You can't say that the creature exists as such, that it is outside of the Creator, because everything in it comes directly from the Creator, from the light. This is why it is completely dominated mandatorily by the light, and that's why this desire is as yet one that you cannot say that it is a desire that is outside of the thought of creation. But that desire, when it begins to feel, how does it begin to feel? When it begins to feel the light that permeates it, the light begins to produce in that desire a sensation of the thought of creation, to do good to his creations. In other words, it brings two things to the desire. On the one hand, let's do it this way. On the one hand, the light brings to the desire the fulfillment, meaning the sensation of itself, but the creature still doesn't, or hardly feels this fulfillment as good, because it's got no prior desire for it. It didn't want it in advance, so that now it feels content with respect compared to the previous state. It didn't feel bad or lacking in the previous state. So this creature, light that expands in the creature, brings the creature, besides the sensation of good, also the sensation of the giver, that there's a Creator who is the giver, and he brings you the good. And if the good, the light, comes directly from the Creator, then the sensation of the giver comes to the Bchina Aleph, to the first phase, indirectly. It comes clothed within the light. You can draw it this way. A light comes, and within the light there is the sensation of the Creator. It's as if I receive a present from someone, and I can see only the present. But when I see it, I see that it is very much for me, how suitable it is for me, how good it is to me. So I begin, because of that, to find that He knows me, that He wanted to do good to me. He loves me, understands me. He is all for me. So from within the present, I begin to perceive the giver of the present. Not Him, but His attitude to me, toward me. He loves me, understands me. He wants to benefit me, and this is what He did. So the first act in creation is already the attainment of the Creator. And this is what brings the creature to evolve, makes the creature evolve. So from this we can understand only one thing. Every element, every state of the creature that changes during its evolution is a greater attainment of the Creator. Even in our world, even in our state, where we do not know where we are, and where we are evolving to, still, every single development means greater and greater closeness, nearing to the attainment of the Creator, which stems from the first act here at the very beginning of creation. So what is Bchina Aleph, the first phase? It's a mere desire to enjoy, which is called the substance or the matter. And this Bchina Aleph contains within it two parts. The first part is the sensation of the present, and the second part in it is the sensation of the giver of the present. The difference between those two parts is that the first part is a state, and the second part is the attainment of the reason for the state. In the second part of Bchina Aleph, what is attained is that there is Bchinat Shoresh, the root phase, which thus procreated Bchina Aleph. And that creates the evolution, where Bchina Aleph, that begins to discern two parts within it, sees in these two parts which is the preferable part. Of course, it is the second, because in it, it discerns a higher, more noble attribute than in the first part. It feels that the progenitor, the first part, so it wants to be like it. You see, the first desire in the creature that comes from within the creature is a desire to be like the Creator, to equalize in form. Here, the thought of creation is actually implemented. Here, it was in potential at the end of Bchina Aleph. But Bchina Bet, the second phase, wants to begin with, to resemble Bchinat Shoresh, the root phase, to resemble the face, the factor, to actually resemble it, meaning to be a giver, or the giver. How can it become the giver? How can Bchina Bet, phase 2, become the giver? Bchina Bet is an evolution of Bchina Aleph, of the first preliminary desire to enjoy. That desire to enjoy is the entire substance of creation. This is what afterwards felt the Creator within. The Creator felt within afterwards is an addition. And its subsequent desire to be like the Creator is an addition to that. To what? To the substance of creation that the Creator had created. The desire, the lack, the want. Meaning every want, every evolution, every addition on top of that substance, which is called the primordial substance, the preliminary substance, comes from the recognition of the Creator, from a desire to evolve and to be like the Creator. This is how the substance evolves. Every addition to the first substance comes only from knowing the Creator, by which the substance begins to grow, to inflate. So in B'china Bet too, which is completely opposite to B'china Aleph, it wants to bestow, and B'china Aleph wanted to receive. So B'china Bet is an addition to B'china Aleph. It's the same substance that took over it, robed itself with additional attribute, the attribute of bestowal. It's an addition. This is why we say that we have within B'chinat Shoresh, over B'chinat Shoresh we have B'china Aleph, phase 1, and over B'china Aleph we have B'china Bet, phase 2. The evolving or accumulating forms. When this B'china Bet wants to give, wants to be like the Creator, it begins to think, so how can I be like the Creator? To give, to whom, and to what? And then it finds, through its evolution, when it thinks, who am I, what am I, how can I, from within, be like Him, then it feels that inside it, B'china Bet, it contains B'china Aleph and also B'chinat Shoresh. So how can it resemble Shoresh? In fact, it is a will to receive. The will to receive can only receive. Now that it wants to give, it might want to give, but it can't, like the Creator. The Creator is the giver himself, but what can the creature give? So then it begins to understand that because the Creator loves me, because of the thought of creation, to do good to me, I can use that thought. If I receive, because He wants to give to me, because He wants to delight me, to please me, meaning out of the desire to bestow, in the second part of B'china Bet, there comes a thought, the thought of bestowal upon the Creator. How? By receiving, by receiving of light, by receiving light from the Creator, and that's what He's going to do. He receives light from the Creator, just like in B'china Aleph, and exactly like B'china Aleph, because in B'china Aleph it knows that's what the Creator created in order to give me, both the desire and the light, just like in B'china Aleph. And I receive it because I want to be like Him, like in B'china Bet. And then it feels that by that it is exactly like the Creator, de facto. By receiving, it actually gives de facto to the Creator. And then it feels itself in the same giving, same bestowal, like the Creator. In other words, it feels what it is like to be in a state of giving. And when it comes to the recognition of where it is, B'chinat Shoresh, B'chinat Aleph, B'chinat Bet, and B'chinat Gimel. So it goes back to the same state. Who am I? I am a desire. Desire for what? I once had a desire to receive, which is my nature. Afterwards, I had an additional desire to bestow. It's an addition. Now, accordingly, I give. The will to receive also comes to me from the Creator, and the will to bestow comes from the sensation of the Creator. What I did overall thus far came directly from the Creator. Where actually I was only activated. That's how it's called in the wisdom of Kabbalah. The acting force in the acted upon. So who am I in that case? So now it begins to think, who am I? Where am I? I received, did I? It wasn't me. I felt that I want to be like him, like the giver, but it's not me. He instilled that desire in me. Was it my doing to be like him? Where am I? So then it begins to feel. Me means feeling the way the Creator feels. That sensation is a rudimentary sensation that does not come from the Creator. That is what you have to feel from within the creature, and that's where it begins to be designed in the creature. The desire to enjoy the status of the Creator. And that desire is expressed in us in the last B'china, in our evolution called B'chinat Daled, which wants to receive everything that comes from the Creator. What does it mean it wants to receive everything that comes from the Creator? It doesn't want to receive like that created it, that came from the Creator in B'chinat Aleph. It wants to enjoy from the state that it now discovered. It now discovered what it means to be like the Creator. Giving like the Creator. So here in B'chinat Daled, it wants to enjoy bestowal. Enjoy bestowal. And that desire is its own desire, its own will. It is a desire of the creature. The first desire of the creature. Previously, all the desires were necessary. Either they came directly or indirectly. That's directly and that's indirectly. They came from the Creator. Only this desire came from the creature. At the end of B'chinat Gimel, phrase 3, where it began to be made, to appear toward the creature, and in B'chinat Daled, in phase 4, it actually established itself. You might say that B'chinat Daled, phase 4, is the independent phase, B'china, compared to all the previous B'chinat phases. That's why this is called the actual creature, and not the previous B'chinot or phases. So here we can picture again, B'chinat Shoresh, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, and Daled, phase is root 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and Prinat Dalet, phase 4, is a unique one, because this is the actual creature. These circles, we can draw them differently. The creator is on the outside, and the evolution of the creature comes from without inwardly. This is the outermost Prinah, that's Prinat Shoresh, the root phase, and the last Prinah that we'll have here is Prinat Dalet, phase 4. Kabbalists picture the evolution of these 4 Prinot in this way, although you can do it either way. So now we've come to a state where the creature, in order to reach its own want and feel that it is its own desire, that it exists in this desire, it has to develop from the thought of creation, from the creator, by 4 phases, 4 Prinot, and the creature being the last Prinah, the last phase. Sometimes we say about Prinat Shoresh that it's not a part of creation because it's the thought of creation of the creator toward the creatures. So that's why we count only 4 Prinot, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the Prinot, the phases of evolution of the creature from the creator. Or we might say the opposite, that Prinat Shoresh Aleph Bet Gimel is how the creator develops the will to receive in order to bring it to its independent form, which will be called the creature. So, either we speak specifically of Shoresh, the roots, or of Prinat Dalet, the 4th phase. Either way, the Shoresh is the creator, Prinat Dalet is the creature, and in between, these are evolutionary phases. And these phases also belong to the act of the creator. They're not ascribed to the creature, but the creature that wants to attain the creator attains its own evolutionary phases. How the creator procreated it and developed it, and finally comes to recognize the creator through the recognition of the actions of the creator. That's how he comes to know him. It's called by your actions we know you. This is how Kabbalists research reality and come to understand the creator. This Prinat Dalet enjoys both fulfillments in it. One is actually the light that comes from the thought of creation. The other fulfillment comes from the status. It enjoys understanding what it means to be the creator. These 2 forms of fulfillment. And that fulfillment fulfills it entirely. The will to receive in it, the will to bestow in it, the desire to have the degree, to acquire the degree of the giver, to enjoy being the giver, the actual giver. That desire is actually not a desire to bestow, it's a desire to enjoy. It's a desire to receive. It is an evolution of that desire that exists in Prinat Aleph, the desire to enjoy, but it came through its evolution to a state that it knows what it wants to enjoy. It wants to enjoy the status of the giver. The giver, or let's put it this way. The child enjoys both what it receives from its mother and the fact that its mother gives it or cares for it. It doesn't just want to receive something, it wants its mother to serve it and feel it. Because the creature discovered who the Creator is, the giver, the love of the Creator for it, not the present, but the love, it wants to enjoy it. It's a much greater pleasure than the pleasure from the present itself. The gift itself can be felt on a very limited amount in B'china Aleph. You can't feel it more than that. Every additional pleasure comes from knowing the giver, from the one who gives me, meaning the sensation of the importance of the Creator. The greater I find that He is, the more important I discover that He is, more eternal, more complete. That gives me additional pleasure. That's why when the will to receive grew in B'china Dalet over the will to receive that was in B'china Aleph, is an additional recognition of the Creator. The recognition of the gap between the degree of the creature, B'china Aleph, and the degree of the Creator, B'china Shoresh. So from this we see that if in some place in creation we have something which is called a creature, or part of it, some desire, some entity, there has to be in it an evolution of these four b'chinot, four phases, which are called Arba B'chinot, Dalet B'chinot Dor Yashar, or four phases of direct light, by which the light comes and develops a desire in it, which is in it as a point or a primordial substance of what Kabbalists refer to as existence from absence, because here in the thought of creation it exists as a preliminary point which doesn't exist before that. That's why it's called existence from absence. So this point develops, and then we have some thought, some lack, some want, some motion, some drive, urge in the creature, which is felt as, this is me. We must never forget that it comes as a result of the evolution of four previous b'chinot to that desire. And these b'chinot come from above, from the Creator. It is not that they just pop up in the creature and it feels some desire. If a thought comes to me, it always evolves by several previous phases, and it comes from the light, from the Creator. Therefore, we can always say the creature consists of four degrees of development, and this is why they're called this B'chinat Shoresh, and Aleph, and Bet, and Gimel, and Dalet, yes, root, and 1, 2, 3, 4, or we designate them by letters, Hebrew letters, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, which are the name Havaya. Why? And there's a tip of the Yud. The Shoresh, it's written as the tip of the Yud. So why do we take these symbols from our alphabet? Because afterwards, as we evolve more into reality, we'll see that the letter Yud tells us about the pleasure that fills up the Kli, is felt within the first desire. The letter Hey is a letter that explains to us, that designates the attribute of bestowal. The letter Vav designates the action of bestowal in B'china Gimel, after B'china Bet. It's the evolution of bestowal in the last Hey. Why is it also designated by the Hey, B'china Dalet, like Bina, like B'china Bet? Because it comes to the same form as B'china Bet, and in so doing it comes to equalize its form with the giver, with B'china Shoresh, the tip of the Yud. The state of B'china Dalet is that it is completely filled, whole, in its every desire. That state is called Ein Sof, infinity, or the world Ein Sof, the world infinity. A world, Olam, is a sensation, a state, a sensation in the desire. Because B'china Dalet is filled up, is fulfilled in all its desires endlessly, infinitely. That's why it's called infinity, Ein Sof. These B'chinot, these phases, Shoresh Aleph, B'Gimel, Dalet, are also called by the names Shoresh is, well, Shoresh Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. They have names. First of all, we'll write it as Havaya. That's the tip of the Yud. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Instead of Hey, we say K, in order to not really emphasize these letters, which talk about forces, spiritual forces. So we'll say K instead of Hey. Now these B'chinot, he's writing B'chinot, or phases, and that's the Havaya, the Yud Kei Vav Kei. So they have names too, called Sfirot. Sfira, the singular for Sfirot, comes from the word sapir, sapphire, illuminating. A desire that has light in it shines with the light that fulfills it. So these Sfirot, or these discernments, are called Keter, Chokhmah, Bina, Zeranpin, and Malchut. What is so special about these names? Keter comes from the word title. Keter, it's the beginning, the thought of creation, which it also comes from the word crown, Keter. So it crowns and controls reality from beginning to end. Chokhmah, wisdom. Why is it called Chokhmah? Because here in B'china Aleph, we see all the light and the Kli that the Creator had dedicated, devoted to creation. The fact that it afterwards evolves and manifests in B'china Bet, Gimel, Dalet. This is an evolution of B'china Aleph. But from the tip of the Yud, the first Sfira came, B'china Aleph, which actually contains everything. But it is it's undeveloped as yet. But it's got the entire Kli and light that came from B'china Shoresh. You might say, yes, but afterwards in B'china Bet, we feel who the Creator is, what his attribute is. The Kli begins to want to be like it, and even be like it de facto. It's all true. These things exist in potential in B'china Aleph. B'china Aleph is everything that comes from the Creator to creation. So that state is called Chokhmah, wisdom. There are many names. It's called Koachma, force. There are many names and interpretations to this word, but that's what the special thing about it. Bina. Bina comes from the word Havana, understanding, where the creature feels and understands, begins to understand who did all that, what his nature is, and what he wants. It's the first time that the appearance of the thought of creation happens. That's in Bina. That's why it wants to give. It wants to eat because it begins to understand the Creator. If we too want to reach the attribute of bestowal, it will be only possible to the extent that we understand what the attribute of bestowal is and how great it is, how much greater it is than our will to receive, which is like Prinat Chokhmah, like the will to receive in Chokhmah. Afterwards is Prinat Zeranpin. Ze'ir Anpin means small face. Ze'ir, small. Panim, Anpin, face, small face. Face means the luminescence of Chokhmah, of wisdom, what comes from the Creator, what the Creator represents, yes, his benefits. Why is it a small face? Because it's the effort of the creature to be like the Creator. That's what is called small face. It's like a child who wants to be like his father. He does the same thing like his father. And Malchut is called Malchut, kingship, or kingdom, because it controls its desires. Now, it's the first time that its desires are independent. It fulfills it and feels it. It, or she actually in Hebrew, is the beneficiary, enjoying both the present and the giver of the present. So all in all, we see that we have 5 pchinot, or 5 sfirot. There are situations where we feel that we have not 5 but 10 sfirot. Why? Where do we get additional 5? We have 5 more within the Zeranpin, which contains special discernments within. They are called Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, and Hod, and Yisod. Instead of Zeranpin, we cancel Zeranpin, and instead of it, we say there's 6 that are in it. Why are there suddenly 6 additional sfirot in Zeranpin? Why is it so great? On the one hand, we said it is small face. It's small because it's the effort of the creature to be like the Creator. When Zeranpin is somewhat like Keter, Keter gives to the lower pchinot, and Zeranpin wants in its action to give like Keter, from below upward toward the Creator. So that exertion, that effort to give to the Creator, is expressed in Zeranpin, where Chesed in it is like Keter, Gvura in it corresponds to Chokhmah, Tiferet to Bina. It has to consist of them in order to build this system vis-a-vis the Creator. So we have Keter, Chokhmah, Bina. Netzach is the actual act of Bina, it's Zeranpin itself. Hod is the Malchut, the desire of Zeranpin to do this act in itself. And Yesod is the sum total of all these actions. The sum total of all these actions. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, the 5 pchinot, like the 5 general pchinot, in its act toward the Creator. So internally, although Zeranpin is small, it contains these 5 parts, and this is how it performs the act of bestowal. from it toward the Creator. And once it discovers this bestowal, it discovers what great pleasure it is to be a giver, what opens up to me. And then it wants to enjoy the status, and this is called Malchut B'chinat Dalet. And these desires that exist in all these B'chinot are impressed by the fulfillment in them, and that fulfillment is called light. Which light exists in them? In Keter itself, that's the light itself. We don't know what this light is. It's light that comes from the Creator. In Chokhmah we have light that is called light of Chokhmah, light of wisdom. In Bina we have a light that's called Bina. In Zeranpin we have both Chokhmah and Bina together, because Zeranpin is a result. B'china Gimel is a result of the first and second actions. B'china Aleph and B'china Bet, that's why we have some Chokhmah and some Bina. And Malchut has everything, well, takes everything to enjoy by itself, so even Bina becomes Chokhmah. It really wants to enjoy completely. So these lights, we name them by 5 names according to their power. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. We call it, for short, Naran Chai. That's the abbreviation, Naran Chai, of Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. Nefesh means Nefisha, it's inanimate. Nothing is filled. Ruach, it's like wind, so there is some change, but not on its own accord. I don't influence it, I just feel some motion. Neshama, why is it called the Neshama? It's a soul, Neshama. It talks about something within me, born in me from the upper one. It's the connection of the creature, the first connection of the creature and the Creator, according to the equivalence of the inner attribute. That's in Bina, that's why it's called Neshama. Chaya, life, means that's when the creature begins to act on its own, to move on its own. And Yechida, it's the unification. It's when it perceives and feels who the Creator is and wants to either take pleasure in His status, or, as we'll see afterwards, wants to unite with Him. These names contain many, many situations. It's not just one state in one world, one incident, but these names are used along the entire wisdom of Kabbalah, and they give us conclusive overall discernments about everything that happens with these B'chinot, Aleph, Shorosh, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, and their evolution. When we talked about signs of B'chinot, Yud, Kei, Vav, Kei, we talked about how in every B'china there's something different from the other, and that's why we use a different symbol. But what is the difference between the B'chinot? It's in the desire in them. But if the desire is different, then the fulfillment is different too, because the fulfillment depends on the desire. straight light, direct light comes from the Creator. Building B'chinat Shorosh Aleph Bet Gimel Dalet. And these B'chinot evolve, and according to their desires, they all feel, each and every B'chinah feels a different fulfillment from that light. So you might say that the light that comes that's B'chinat Shorosh Aleph Bet Gimel Dalet. So the light that comes is abstract light. It's just a light. Or it's called the revolving light or straight light. But that's when it builds the B'chinot. But then when it builds the B'chinot, in each and every B'chinah, we have a specific light, or Chokhmah in B'chinat Chokhmah, light of Bina in B'chinat Bina, and Chokhmah and Bina in B'chinat Gimel, and then actual Chokhmah, the great Chokhmah in B'chinat Dalet. All in all, because we have only two primary attributes, the Kli, which is the will to receive, a Kli is a vessel, or a desire. So that Kli, that desire, can be either to receive or to bestow. This is why we have two kinds of pleasures. Pleasure from receiving, which is called Chokhmah, and pleasure from giving, but I enjoy this giving. Here, we're not drawing the pleasure that expands in the Kli, but its action, so to speak, the direction of the act of bestowal. This is called O Chasadim, light of Chasadim. O means light. So the Kli, the vessel, the pleasure that it feels from receiving is called O Chokhmah, light of wisdom. When the Kli gives, its giving is done by receiving in order to induce a sensation of pleasure in the giver. So within that Kli, that pleasure is called O Chasadim, light of mercy. How does Malchut, or how does B'chinat Gimel, or B'chinat Bet, in all these B'chinot Bet Gimel and Dalet, there is a sensation of the giver, and the sensation of the giving of the giver, the sensation of their own receiving, and the sensation of the act, their own act. But how can the Kli give? We said that the Kli cannot give. It can only either receive, like in B'chinat Aleph, or not receive, but want to give, as in B'chinat Bet. B'chinat Bet wants to give, it doesn't actually give. How can it give? In order to give, it has to receive, as in B'chinat Aleph, with the intention of doing it in order to cause pleasure to the giver. This is why we say that in B'chinat Gimel we have both light of Chokhmah and light of Bina. So the act of giving on the part of the Kli and the part of the creature is in receiving, that's the act. But the act is also accompanied by an intention. So all in all, the act of reception with the intention of bestowal is called bestowal. This is what the creature can give, because to begin with, the creature is a will to enjoy, to receive, to absorb, to fulfill itself, only that. Therefore, when in B'china Dalet the creature receives entirely according to the will to bestow and will to receive that it felt, this B'china Dalet is then called Malchut, kingship, dominating, wanting to receive all the situations that appeared before it and wanting to take pleasure in them infinitely. That's why it's called infinite world. Olam Ein Sof. Olam means a state of Ein Sof, no limitation in the reception of pleasure and enjoyment and abundance. What we learned today is called Dalet B'chinot Dor Yashar, the 4 phases of direct light. The entire reality that afterwards we will study will be a result, will stem from the tip of the Yud, the first Hey, the Vav, and the last Hey. Or the 10 Sfirot, Ketech, Chochmah, Binah, Zaranpin, and Malchut, or Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechidah, the lights within the Sfirot, etc. Afterwards we will learn, as we open up each B'china, each Sfirah, we will discover worlds in there. And there really will become 5 worlds, with all the creatures and the created beings, etc. in each and every B'china in them. And all of that, and how it will evolve, will eventually, we'll have Olam, Adam Kadmon, and Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah. These will be the worlds, Olamot. Then we'll have a state within that Malchut Dens of Ein Sof, the infinite Malchut, from which stem all these states of Olamot, the worlds. So from it came the Neshamot, too, the souls of all the creatures. He's writing Nivraim, creatures. And all these creatures were split actually into degrees. Of still vegetative, animate, and root, still vegetative, animate, and human. Only the human must correct itself into equivalence of form. And the state of equivalence of form is called Gmar Tikkun, end of correction, meaning that Malchut, through all the worlds and all the creatures, Nivraim, creatures. He deleted the previous Nivraim. So Malchut reaches a Tikkun, correction, through the Adam, through the human, which induces the previous attributes of the animate, vegetative, still, and shorish, root, and through them reaches the Creator. So there's nothing more than these 4 B'chinot, Yud Kei Vav Kei, or Ketech, Chochmah, Binah, Zaranpin, Malchut, in the entire reality. Whatever we learn, whatever we see, whatever we discover, is all, in fact, contained within these 5 discernments, especially in the last desire, in Malchut, because it contains all the previous B'chinot, and this desire is us. And that's what we'll find later on, that this desire is the only thing that needs to be corrected. And the more we study reality, that we have to reach it, and how the means to reach Maltikun, the end of correction. So accordingly, we'll be able to implement the thought of creation and come to a state of eternity, wholeness, equivalence of form with the Creator. And this is, in fact, everything that the wisdom of Kabbalah contains, meaning the whole reality, upper and lower, the creatures and the Creator with respect to the creatures, and how the creatures reach equalizing their attitude toward the Creator. That's enough.